All right. Hello and welcome back to the Avoiding Average podcast. My name is Susan Gates, your host, and today we have another astrocartography reading. Today I have Carla Maldonado with me, and she is a Spirit Baby channel, and she's based in San Francisco, but born in Germany. And so, Carla, thank you so much for being here with me today.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for reaching out. Carla is one of the brave volunteers that I got when I was first looking for folks to work with on this project. And so I'm really excited. I love Germany personally. So I think whenever I meet anybody who's from Germany, I'm like, yay, awesome. So, Carla, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you briefly. And well, we'll dive into who you are and your birth chart. But what is your familiarity with astrology, first of all?
Okay, so I'll start like how I grew up and then I'll weave and get to the astrology. Sounds good?
Okay.
So I grew up in Germany. That's where I was born. That's where my whole family still is. And I came to the US to play college tennis after high
Nice. Okay.
school. And so
Okay.
my whole life was about tennis. Like that was
Mm,
everything that I was, like thinking about doing. And I feel like once I got into high school, it shifted a little bit and I got
okay.
interested in boys and, all the things.
Mhm.
And I feel like I realized that I don't think tennis is necessarily for me anymore. Like I literally wanted to be a professional tennis player, like travel the world. Like I wanted to be like in the top like 100 of the world. Like, I was playing tournaments, traveling all over the world, like even while I was in high school and all of that, or even previous before that. And so everything surrounded around tennis in my life. And then when I came to the US, I actually studied my freshman year at Baylor University in Texas.
Nice.
So that was a
Okay.
little bit of a culture shock, coming from
Yeah.
Germany. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
didn't work out quite so well for me. Like I had a lot of injuries and like I'm sure you're well familiar with it when you're like not in alignment, like things might just happen and show you that you're not in alignment, right? And so after a year there, I left back home to Germany and I studied for a year over there. And then I felt this like, I want to go to the US again and try one more time, just like have this adventure. I
Mhm.
always figured that I'm so young, like I could always come back. But something in me just was like, no, I think I'm meant to be studying in the US. And
Nice.
so I tried one more time. I ended up in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area in California, a small private school that was much, much better aligned, but yet the tennis didn't quite work out so well. And so that was my first, like, I feel like, what do they call it? The dark night of the soul, where it was like
Okay.
really hard for me to give that up and to just like, wait, what is life besides
Mm,
tennis, right? Like, I had no idea. And so that's when I dove into things like yoga and just like, focusing on my grades and like actually preparing myself to like have a corporate career and things like that. And I had a friend that was like, I would say, like, for me, very spiritual. Now, when I look back at
okay.
it, I mean, mostly she was into yoga and maybe some like
Okay.
Palo Santo or something like that,
Okay.
but she really inspired me, and I feel like she was the one that kind of like got me into that. And I feel like it started with yoga. It started with just like staying sane and making time on the mat. Once I was in my corporate job, that was just like a
Mm,
lot.
mhm.
And then I started diving into like manifesting and human design. I feel like through like podcasts, and Instagram, I learned about that. And I would say it took me a long time, to be honest. I always knew my sun sign, of course, and I was always curious. Like, I don't know, back in Germany, we had these like magazines like Glamour and stuff like that.
Yeah, with
They
the
would
horoscopes and
show,
then
yeah, the horoscopes. I love that.
me too.
But I don't know when the first I didn't even know there was such a thing as like having like multiple signs, like because my family I grew up very 3D, like very 3D. I love them to death, but very 3D. And so everything that I was exploring in California was new to me. Like it was just like this awakening to like, oh, there's more out there. And with the astrology, I had my first reading probably a year and a half, no, actually like 2 years ago at this point, I would say, maybe two
Okay.
and a half years ago. So I would say
Okay.
it's more recent, but it definitely helped me just like look under the hood, I would say, and see what's actually going on. And at the point that I had my first astrology reading, I was already more aligned with living my purpose. So a lot of like I didn't even know about cancer, like I didn't even know what that was like supposed to mean or what I'm supposed to be doing, like
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I feel like you're the expert, so I'll let you explain all that once we get into it. But that's about
Yes,
me
you definitely will.
and my little exposure to astrology and then like my first actual reading.
Amazing. All right. So you're fairly familiar with your chart, and so that'll be good because so what I like to do is start off with a natal chart reading because that gives us a basis of, you know, who you are, your experiences, what you're kind of living because no matter where you go, your birth chart's still your birth chart. That's still a fundamental part of you. When you move somewhere else, you're going to have things shift a little bit and a little bit more emphasis on certain areas of your life. And so I'm interested to see what San Francisco brought up for you and your chart. And so, yeah, well, if you're ready, we can just go ahead and dive into it.
As ready as I can be.
Yay, awesome. Okay, so let's go
I
ahead
never
and
know what comes up. I'm like, okay, how ready do I actually need to be?
okay, so this is your astrocartography map. This is basically what the world looks like if you were to take your birth chart and map it out onto the world. And um, what it is based off of is like the four angles of a birth chart, which is your ascendant, your IC, your descendant, and your midheaven. Um, and basically where in the world those planets align with those angles in your chart. So we'll start with your birth chart. Wow, look at that 10th house stellium.
What does that
Okay.
mean? Or can you show it
Um,
to me?
yeah, so can you see this wheel right here? Okay, so this is your birth chart. This is basically the basis of who you are and the kind of journey, I guess, the experiences you're meant to have in the world in this lifetime and that sort of thing. And so, what we have that's so interesting. So I
There's
I'm
a
sure you
lot,
you
right?
dealing
There's a lot in like two areas.
yeah. So it's like the 10th house, fourth house axis is very prominent in your chart, which is so interesting. And then there's another part that I'm going to get to later. Yeah. So first off, you already knew you were a Cancer sun, right?
That's right.
So Cancer sun sitting in the 10th house of career, of legacy. Really, when I see like that stacked 10th house, like all these different things here, is that you came here to do some work because you came here to make like a big impact in some specific way for you in a sense. And it's funny that you're a spirit baby medium because Cancer, the sign itself, is often referred to as the mother, the nurturer, um, the protector in a sense. And you have Mercury sitting there too. Mercury is all about communication. Communicating with spirit babies really does kind of feel aligned there.
Oh, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So when I had the last astrology reading, I actually wasn't a Spirit Baby channel quite yet. And so it's kind of cool to even see even more in my chart,
Hmm.
if that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I was coaching and I was focusing on like helping moms, postpartum moms, essentially live their dream life and just feel happy in like their new identity of being a mom, which was aligned back then. But this is really
Mhm.
cool. I love it. Keep going. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Well, so that's the funny part too, is that like you can get your birth chart read once, and what comes out there may not be the same thing that comes out the next time you have it done or by a different
Hmm.
reader because there's so many different ways to interpret it. And I go based on off of intuition. Whatever comes up is what I say. And so whatever's kind of meant for you at the time is going to come up, at least that's the way I believe it. Um, and so it's funny to me that you say that you were helping other moms in postpartum, and I wonder, like, because you have Chiron there, was postpartum a significant challenging part in your life.
Yeah, do you want me to share more or?
Sure, if you'd like to. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So postpartum is I always wanted to be a mom and I always knew that I like being a mom is like for me. Like I didn't even question it. Kind of like I always knew I would get married and I always knew I would be a mom. And so my son though, he was actually unplanned and we had already been married for probably like 5 years. I'm not going to do the math right now, but
Okay.
so we're like solid in our relationship, but there was a lot of struggles that we had with my husband's health. And so he came at a time where we really needed him in the sense that he was like my husband's like saving grace. Like like, in the
Little
mornings, you
angel
just like,
baby. Yeah.
exactly, you wake
Yeah.
up and you have something to like make you happy essentially. Like you naturally keep going when things are really hard. And you also want to better yourself because you want to be able to enjoy the moments and like create moments and memories with your little baby, right? So he came at the most perfect time, but with me and like being like I feel like the like dominant figure in our family and really like holding it all together back then. I had no idea how to actually handle it all, like being the mom myself, like being the wife, and then like being um yeah, the mom to my son. And what I meant by being the mom to myself, like how to take care of myself, right? Like I had no idea how to juggle that all. And it wasn't innate in me to like accept help and to ask for help. So I when my son was 3 weeks old, I got horrible mastitis that um ended up
That's
being an abscess, and so I needed a lot of medical attention. Not a lot, but, I needed to have appointments here and there to just get that
Mhm.
resolved, and I had to rely on help. I had to ask people to watch my son back then, so I could go to doctor appointments, or I could even, like I remember that first week where at night somebody needed to help me out, with him at night. And so there was this whole struggle of like asking for help and then also being okay with formula because in my head I always knew I was gonna like fully breastfeed, and so
Yeah.
then I had to do like half formula and half nurse him. And so it was like this whole like awakening and like struggle, and it just let me down this path of like always being tired. And then I realized, like, wait, what am I doing? Like, I don't think life is meant to be this hard.
Yeah.
And back then, I also, once my maternity leave was over, I went back into my corporate job. And so it just was this like huge juggle that felt extremely hard. And I
Mhm.
just realized that I don't think it's meant to be that hard. And so that's kind of when I started my journey. And like, yeah, that definitely happened in postpartum. So you're spot on with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know how familiar you are with Chiron, but it's like it's known as the wounded healer, in that um, what your greatest wounds are how you help other people, or when you help other people, you're killing yourself too in that sense. So yeah, that's very interesting that you were able to take that and help other people through that as well.
Hmm.
So you have this all here sitting in your 10th house. And I guess one thing that I'll say is that it's interesting because your entire chart is like rotated 180 degrees from like the standard chart, we'll say, because and normally it would start in Aries, right, and then go all the way around. And so Cancer rules the 4th house typically, Capricorn rules the 10th house, and so you have these swapped. And so it's it's interesting, like the work life balance is probably a really big part of your life just because you have all these different things going on in your 4th house as well. So um with Capricorn sitting there, I imagine you taking care of the household is a big part of you, in that, like, taking responsibility for things and making sure that things are running efficiently. And please feel free to stop me if you have anything that you
You're
wanted to
spot
interject.
on you're spot on in a sense that I feel like I manage the whole household, but I actually don't do the certain household tasks that, I don't want to say every mom does, but my husband's and my roles are a little bit reversed in a sense that I'm the main breadwinner of our family, and my husband is the main caretaker of our family, which,
Nice.
in an ideal world, the roles will be reversed. Like, that's what we both would love, but it isn't
Okay.
like that, which also
Hmm.
makes sense that I have all this careers, emphasis on career, because I do love being the breadwinner too, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like a juggle for me, and I really try to have strong boundaries with my work. And of course, often they get blurred, but I really try not to. Where I am like the present mom, and I
Hmm.
am the one that kind of like juggles it all, like, or order the lunches at school, or I like, make sure my son is signed up for activities, things like that.
Hmm.
And of course, I do a bunch of stuff for my little daughter who's a year and a half too.
Hmm. Yeah, it can be a lot, and it's interesting too that you say that the roles are kind of reversed, or you do things a little differently because you do have Uranus here, which is, and it also moves into Aquarius as well, which those two are both tied together, but they are essentially doing things a little differently, maybe being a little bit more progressive rather than traditional. And so, like Uranus in Capricorn is here just to buck tradition in a sense and just do things the way that works for you or that feels really aligned. And so, with this opposition here, and that moves into your sun, your Chiron. When you say that you're not 100% comfortable with it, or it's not like the ideal, that makes total sense because oppositions usually deal with like swinging from one extreme to the other, but trying to find like the right balance in between.
That's
And
literally me, like
yeah.
1000%. If I could, I would work all day.
Hmm.
And then if I could, I also would just be with my kids all day.
Hmm.
It's like this, it's just the struggle that I have, and where I sometimes like prioritize my work over my family.
Hmm.
And I really need to call myself out on my BS and actually be
Hmm.
like, wait, no, like, let me just be more balanced. Like, everything can wait. So what you just said,
Yeah.
like, that hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say too, it's like you also have other placements that kind of support that what you had just said too. So it's like you have your moon here in your fourth house, which is all about our emotions, our security, our comfort. Its natural place is sitting there in that fourth house, and so like you being really drawn to that home life, to really enjoying that time with your family is it makes sense like that's a big part of who you are, and will drive that emotional satisfaction, but it's also sitting here opposing or not Chiron, Ceres is all about how we nurture ourselves, and Ceres is sitting in your 10th house, and so for you it's like work is also very nurturing in that regard too, and so it's you have all these oppositions here that are like, okay, yes, I love both of these things, but how do we make this work together? um, and in addition to that, you have your nodes in both of those houses. And so it's like, what I'm guessing, if I had to say, is that like there's maybe not yet, I don't know when, but it's like, how can you innovate in terms of how you are living, like your home life, to support so that you are able to kind of balance those things out. Aquarius is all about innovation. It's about doing things differently. It's change and kind of leading the way for the future in a sense. And it's also about the collective too. It's how can we kind of help other people too? You have an Aquarius moon, which is very deeply tied to what's going on in the world. Aquarius, in a sense, can be very detached because it can get very overwhelmed just because they care so much. And even myself, I think I had like misconstrued the Aquarian energy before as like always being very detached or always being very aloof, but it's because it can be too much in a sense if you focus on that too much. Um, and so having the nodes there, it's like, where can you balance all those things? Where can you balance the emotions that are tied to the home, and how can you innovate in a sense so that you can create that greater balance too? And where can you also take from, your past life experiences of maybe being in the spotlight or taking the lead or um, really expressing yourself to help create that balance? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious more about the past life stuff, but I also
Yeah.
don't want to derail our conversation. Um, but it's like spot on. And I think, yeah, I feel like each I mean almost like each month, each year it gets better, right? In that sense of like finding the balance and just like figuring out more. And
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like I'm working on it. It's a work in progress,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm pretty content, even though I know it's not ideal, my situation right now, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a good thing too, though. Is the finding the beauty in the everyday, so that you are able to continue your work in and knowing that in the future things might change and things will get better. You'll figure out a way, right?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I really had that turning point like a couple weeks, months ago when I'm still in my corporate job. And so when I was promoted in my corporate job and I got this huge salary bump, I noticed my business like flourish more
Mm,
because I didn't have that pressure anymore of like bringing in more money. No, like I had enough in my corporate job. And I feel like the juggle, like that's what I mean by the juggle of it all. Like sometimes it's a lot. And then you were spot on with my business, the work that I do with the women I help. That just fills my heart so much. It's really fulfilling for me. So this is where I feel like sometimes I need to catch myself and not work too much.
mhm,
And that's where I need to find the balance with the family. And I really do see and feel that turning point that occurred like a couple months ago when I'm like, oh wow, like now I can see it all like pan out. Whereas before I was like, how is it ever going to work out in my business? You know what I mean?
mhm. Yeah, that's fascinating too, because it's like, so right now you have with the North Node, South Node, they're sitting in the Virgo Pisces axis, right? And when I'm thinking about like what happened a couple months ago, the final eclipse for the Libra Aries and the first eclipse within that axis happened. And so it's like kind of finding that selfless sense, really trusting the universe and your work life, your the daily routines in life, and then also working with other people. I don't if your husband had a major part in that, as well as how you kind of made that all work together. It was I imagine some of those things kind of came up there for you.
Yeah, I feel like my husband is my enabler. Like when I communicate to him like how much it
Hmm.
means to me to have this morning to myself or to even have this hour and a half to myself, like he makes it
Hmm.
happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like he's my enabler and I always tell him like I'm doing all of this for us, right? Like everything that I do it for us as a family and as a family unit. And me getting the promotion, the raise is just a reflection too of our relationship. Like that's kind of
Yeah,
like how I think about it.
yeah.
And so yeah, I feel like he didn't necessarily like orchestra anything, but he did. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he helped you, and I
Yeah.
think we all need that help. We need that support, and that's amazing that you have that in your partnership too. Um, I mean, I imagine he's a little bit of a force to reckon with too, in the sense that he's willing to do and go after things and make things happen in a sense with that Aries energy there. Plus your Mars there, so
Wait, can you tell me more about that? Because his sun sign is Aries.
yeah,
Do you
yeah. Oh, that's
see
awesome.
him in my chart almost? Is it like foreshadowing what like what ended up happening when we met?
Well, I don't know if I could say that for certain because that would depend on some of the transits and stuff too. But it's what's interesting is that you have Mars, which can usually represent the opposite sex or the person or the male figures in your life in a sense, and then in your seventh house, it's right there on the cusp. But I mean, if you're looking at a whole sign too, squarely in your seventh house, and oftentimes when we look at the descendant, that can be indicative of the type of partner that you tend to attract. And so I don't know if you've had like multiple partners in the past or whatever, but that strong Aries energy, the initiator, the doer, the one that kind of starts things and forges the path for other people, that's that kind of archetype that you would likely be attracting. And so it's funny that your husband's sun sign is is Aries.
Yes, I've never had anyone tell me this, so I'm like blown away
Okay.
right now because I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I know he's my guy. Like, I know we've been, next year we're gonna be
Yeah.
married for 10 years. Like, I never had
Oh,
any
amazing.
doubt. But
Yeah.
like, we're literally like, people tell us, like, oh my gosh, like, relationship goals, like, perfect couple. Like, don't get me wrong, we have our struggles and we've been through a lot. But like, at the core, I know that like we're just meant to be together. Like, we're just like best
Yeah.
friends. Like, we push each other, we make each other better. Like, we're just like a team. And it's so cool that you're confirming this right now.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, when in Aries season was he born?
The 29th of March.
29th of March. Okay, so it's kind of like towards the beginning then. So it's fairly close to your descendant. So that's a pretty good sign.
Really? That's so, oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
cool. I just
Yeah.
geek out on all this stuff. But
I do
astrology,
too.
to be honest, for me, it just doesn't resonate for me to learn. Like, there's a lot of modalities that I'm like, oh, I'm so curious about. But astrology, I'm like, no, there's like experts like you, Susan, that's like, this is your thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everything sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, the whole spiritual world is kind of just like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible and so fascinating. And it's funny that you're like curious about other modalities and stuff like that because you do have a Gemini placement.
And what
Geminis
does
are
that mean?
Geminis are like the curious ones. They're the ones that are kind of have a finger in everything in a sense, and they like learning about everything. And so, um, yeah, that's just fascinating to me. But since we're here, I wanted to actually ask you something. Like, have you ever thought about writing a book?
Oh my gosh. You're making me like emotional because
Really?
yes. Oh my gosh. What does it, I mean, I know what it means. Like, this really hits home usually when I
Okay.
have these like readings and like you ask me the question and I'm like emotional. Like, clearly there's
Oh,
something that needs to be
yeah,
released.
yeah.
I have thought about writing a book, and I here's the backstory though. I struggled writing essays in school, struggled
Mm,
hard. And so I now have this big dream of like writing a book, but
mhm,
at the same time, I'm like, I don't think I can, you know?
mm, mm, yeah. I wonder what it is about it that you don't think that you can. Can
Yeah,
you
I feel like now I'm
explain that?
getting, it's like essentially like for the years and years that I was in school and college, right? Just like having this really hard time and like really struggling with it. Like, it
Hmm.
really did bring me a lot of anxiety. And I
Hmm.
feel like working through that and almost getting like rid. This is how I
Hmm.
talk in my sessions. Let's get rid of this old belief.
Yeah.
We gotta get rid of, like, I need to like keep doing the work to really eliminate this old
Yeah.
belief and to know that, like, if you're asking me this, I'm assuming I meant maybe to write a book, and to just know that if I want to do it, I can. And I feel like now I've also realized that everything I do, I just channel.
Hmm.
So if I just channeled the book, why wouldn't it happen and why wouldn't it come out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I find it interesting because so the literally the last person that I just talked to, she has written two books now, is about to release her third book. And she was telling me that she had Venus conjunct her North Node in the ninth house. And she was like, yeah, somebody else told me that it's like the publishing placement, or that's what you kind of see. Your Venus is sitting in the ninth house in Gemini, trining your North Node. And you have your Mercury in your 10th house. And so I'm like, this, that feels very much aligned, or at least based on, what she had said. So, you know, who knows when it'll happen, but it feels very much like something that, you know, you're kind of meant to do.
That's so cool and so confirming. And I actually just signed up for something where I'm gonna be creating my own spirit baby card deck, which I feel really excited about. And I
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
part of that, and the reason, like, I feel like I already have it in me, but part of why I signed up for this support and this coaching with it through the process is And I literally just told my friend this like 2 days ago. I was like, I signed up, I paid the payment, and like I cannot
Mhm.
wait to do this because I just need the support on the writing part, meaning that I just need to sit down and do it and
Yeah.
not distract myself, not like self-sabotage in the sense that like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, but now I'm like, I gotta do it. But I feel like I literally was thinking about like that is writing a mini book, that like
Mhm.
booklet that goes with the
Mhm.
deck. And I feel like it's just the beginning. Like that's kind of like,
Yeah.
the vision I have for myself.
Yeah. And not to leave too many spoilers, although her episode will come out before this one anyway, but it's funny that you're planning on doing a deck because that's essentially how she ended up getting her publishing gig is she had created her own tarot deck. It got gifted to an editor at Penguin Random House and she loved the way that she wrote and that's how she got her book deal.
That's
so
wild. Oh my gosh, the
so it could
synchronicities are
happen.
just
I
wild.
know, right? I
Yeah, and
love the
I
universe
mean,
sometimes.
yeah, and for me, it's like one step at a time, right? Like I
Mhm,
do things that light me up, and this
mhm.
card, like this deck, I know it's gonna light me up, and it's gonna like just
Yeah,
like be so juicy, so creative, like such a creative process for me, because
yeah.
I never considered myself as a creative. Like growing
Really?
up, I was just a tennis player, right? Like I
Mm,
struggled in art because I feel like I didn't know how to access that,
mhm,
and I feel like this evolution of like, what's my purpose? Like, I always wondered, like, what the hell is my purpose? And then eventually I found it when I signed up for a spiritual life coaching certification that
mm.
promised you would find your purpose. And for me, that purpose ended up being the coaching. um, that, like, I just know that it's gonna be like the most exciting, fulfilling like process for me, and I don't yes, I want to get the deck into like as many hands as I can of women who
Mhm,
are trying to conceive.
mhm.
And at the same time, I feel like it will be so healing for me to just get it out in the world, and to say like I did that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it will be, and it's interesting to me that you feel like you weren't creative growing up, and so we'll back this up with the preface that this is a Placidus chart, and there's other ways to read the astrology chart, which include whole sign, which basically just takes each sign and that's a whole house. And so even though this is your fourth house Aquarius in Placidus, in whole sign it would be your fifth house, and the fifth house relates to creativity, it relates to children, it relates to fun, romance, pleasure, those sort of themes. And so having your moon and your north node there is creativity is a huge part of your life. It may look a little different to other people, but it is essentially a huge part of who you are and who you're meant to be in this lifetime. And your south node is in Leo, which traditionally rules the fifth house, which so it's like where can you channel like some of the past life experiences, gifts, talents that you have and bring it in to the future.
I love that. And yeah, like I feel like now, like that I've been finding myself more and more, right?
Hmm.
I feel way more creative and I know that I'm
Yeah,
creative.
yeah.
But it took me a while. It's like even the clothes I wear, like the jewelry I wear, like you're right, I express my creativity differently. And it's also in like I also feel like my creativity is like seen in like the work that I publish, like
Mm-hmm.
the graphics I use
Hmm.
on Instagram or like the
Hmm.
posts. But yeah, it's so funny
Yeah.
because my corporate job is also in finance and I used
Really?
to work with a lot of creatives, and I was
Okay.
like I always love like those meetings were my favorite ones, but because I just like saw their full expression.
Hmm.
And I was like, and the finance stereotype is like whatever, I mean, I feel like everyone knows, when they think about a finance person, it's like, just like
Oh, dull.
a little dull. And so I always think of myself like I'm not the typical finance person, but of course, like I
Hmm.
don't like. I mean, yeah, sometimes I say that at work too.
So it's interesting that you got into finance, and I'd be curious to see what your chart does in San Francisco. Because like looking at this, I'm like, eh. I don't, I guess I don't really see that, but maybe in higher learning. Yeah, going going back into this, it's funny. I want to at least hit like your personal planets on here before we move on to the chart. You have Mars in Aries. Mars is traditionally the planetary ruler for Aries, and so it's like it's there. It's kind of it's a lot more strengthened, I guess. And it sits in it's right there on the cusp of the seventh to the eighth house, but technically the eighth house. And so the eighth house often relates to the shadows. It relates to death, rebirth, transformation, those darker scorpionic type themes. And so it's like for you, it almost feels like that is there's a lot going on underneath the surface for you in a sense. And what I imagine is growing up, tennis. Mars also relates to physicality, athleticism in a sense. And so for you, it's like there probably was that element of diving into the tennis in order to let that be your therapy.
And I mean, I feel like my family, like, there wasn't such a thing as like therapy. You know what I mean? We didn't really speak about our emotions as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the tennis is always where it came out, you know, those terrible
Mm-hmm.
videos where you see like professional tennis players like throw their rackets and stuff like
Yeah,
that, right? Like that's how they
yeah,
let go of the emotion. And I would do that
yeah,
at times for sure
yeah,
too.
yeah. I feel like I see this a lot for people who do have like Mars in the eighth house. It's just like the exercise or sports or whatever is like how they cope in a sense and deal with like the harder feelings maybe that come up and that need an outlet. And really, I mean, as long as you're not overdoing it's like it's a um, I think that is a good way of using that Mars energy instead of exploding on other people. um, which can be a little bit more of the shadow trait there. But um,
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
like now though, I don't have that outlet as much anymore. I feel like
Mhm.
exercising's like, unfortunately, like I wish I would prioritize it more, but I don't. It's like the least of my priorities. So I squeeze in like a workout maybe once or twice a week. I do go on walks a lot,
Okay.
which I feel like I count as movement. So my
Hmm.
goal is always like every day, let me do some sort of movement. But the actual workout and the playing tennis, I haven't done in like a minute.
Yeah. So you brought up an interesting point, and I don't know if this is like an actual theory or whatever, but my personal theory is that like when we're looking at Placidus, it's you see that it starts in one sign and moves into another. And so with you like moving into something more maybe more aggressive or whatever and into calmer maybe nature walk type things it feels very aligned with like the Taurus energy there. So and it could also be just like where you are too and how that plays out, but that'd be interesting to look at.
I love it.
um yeah. Okay, and then last thing I wanted to cover is you have this second house here with the Scorpio placements. um you have Chiron trining your that's so funny. Your Pluto and Pluto, planet of death, rebirth, transformation, the one that kind of forces you to change when it's time. Um, it's funny that it is trining, your sun and your Chiron because it's like I imagine that switching into supporting others with the postpartum coaching or support for women. Um, is that fairly profitable for you?
It was alright. I feel like I still had a lot of, like, struggles, you know
Hmm.
like, building a business, right? It's, like, this whole evolution of, like, finding yourself, and I feel like it's, like, a reflection of, like, how you're doing in life as well,
Hmm.
and I feel like back when that was the case, I still had things I needed to work through,
Mm.
but it was the first time that I actually had people coming into my world, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
So for sure that was like exciting and I did make money from it. I wouldn't say it was profitable, but at the same time I didn't really prioritize it as much and I feel like that was more that struggle of like trusting myself to show up and trusting myself that I can actually create the transformation in my clients. Yeah, but I feel like if I would have, and I still have postpartum clients, it's more like that my niche and my messaging is about the woman who is on her preconception journey.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, it's so cool though for me to see, like, to just hear like my life, or like the way that you see my life based on the chart. You know what I mean? That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about astrology, quite honestly. It's like this just kind of gives like a little glimpse into your life and like who you are and what you've experienced and how you kind of got there. And so I appreciate you sharing like the examples of how these things have shown up, because as I had mentioned earlier, it's like a chart could be interpreted in a million different ways. But and so I go based off of intuition and what feels right, based on what I'm seeing. And so thank you for the confirmation of everything that you're kind of working toward. And it's funny too, or interesting, I guess I should say, that like, you know, it may not have been as profitable for you when you were doing the work of supporting people postpartum, but um, because it makes this T square aspect here. You see this big red triangle, and it goes in between your Pluto, your South Node, and your North Node, as well as your Ceres there. And so, kind of like what I think about is like if you can step into your own personal power, um, that's like that's where you'll kind of see more of that reward in a sense. If you can balance some of the gifts that you've had in past lifetimes into where you want to go in the future, because the second house, it rules your money, but in possessions, but also your own values and you in some ways like self-worth too. And so like if that's something that you can embrace more of, especially with having your Lilith there, in Holstein it would be in your second house, Placidus is in your third house. And what I feel like is your ability to confidently step up into who you are and expressing that too, and owning that will support you there. And so when you say like, I struggled with really showing up or like really feeling confident that I could create that change in other people's lives, that makes sense. But it's also something that you're here to master as well.
Yes, that resonates 1000%. And I feel like that's the shift that I've been through those last couple of months. And I feel like that's why I also got, that promotion in my corporate job, because I finally stepped into my power and believe that I am that woman who gets a promotion, who has a thriving business. And I feel like now I'm like seeing it all, the different dots connect.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that makes so much more sense now that I'm thinking about it, because Lilith is in Scorpio right now. And so, yeah, I imagine this is going to be a big theme for you. Those themes are kind of activated for you, and you have Lilith as your 29th degree planet, which is an anaretic degree. It's like the degree of mastery in a sense. It's like it's here. It's one of the more significant points in your chart where it's something that you are really here to reclaim. You're really here to embody and step into. So I'm excited for you. We'll see how this plays out over the next few months and all that.
Yeah, such a good reminder.
Yeah. Okay, so that's your birth chart. Do you have any questions about this before we move on?
No, I don't think so. I'll let you know if anything comes up.
Okay, so when we look at your birth chart, this is the energy that you embody fully when you are in your birth town. And so it's like it's the same energy that's kind of followed you around the same time. And so when you're in Germany, it's likely that you'll probably see more of that work-life balance being a major part of your life. But let's go ahead also and zoom in where you're gonna have to let me know where exactly in Germany your birth town is.
I was gonna say to you too, I'd be like, can you zoom in? Like, I don't even
Yeah.
know where I'm
So there's Germany.
where
I
I'm
was
from. But yeah, it's exactly there. So yeah, zoom in on Germany. And then like I'm pretty much in the middle of Germany. I think is that am I
Right.
reading? Yeah, so there's Berlin, right? A
I
little
don't
bit.
know why Berlin is all the way over there. Hang on a second. Let me zoom in.
Oh yeah, why is it different from Oh
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know. When it zooms
Frankfurt.
in, it.
So I'm right in between Frankfurt and Mannheim. You see that on the map?
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Right in
Yeah.
between.
Okay. Perfect. Oh, like near Darmstadt.
Yeah,
um,
how do you know?
that's
Oh, it said it. Oh yeah, right there. Next
yeah.
to a couple towns over to yeah.
Okay.
I'm from
Yeah.
like a small town. Like we're talking about 5,000 people in my town and then 10,000 people in like the neighboring town. So it's like
Mm,
small.
okay. Okay. Yeah. My husband, the company that he works for is based in Darmstadt, and so he's gone there a few times.
What a
Yeah.
coincidence. That's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty funny. But okay, so right off the bat, it's like you have, which I mean, we saw this in your birth chart too, of Uranus being very close to your IC. I think that was the closest angular placement that you had. Um, but what that indicates, and I don't know how long you had lived in Germany. But, well, you said you moved in high school.
Yeah, I was
After
like
high school to college, right?
18 I think when I moved.
Okay. So Uranus on the IC is usually indicative of like non-traditional ways of living in terms of your home and or even your family life. Um, I would liken it to like maybe lots of sudden changes, maybe moving frequently, or even just like unconventional ways of living. I don't know if you had like multiple people living in your house that were not part of your family, or I don't know. Um,
Not that one, but
okay,
in high school, I studied abroad in Australia. And
cool.
I feel like I was the only one from my class to
Hmm.
do that. So I feel like the only one of my family to do that.
Hmm.
So I feel like that was unconventional. And then I feel like just what I've shared about my journey of like really seeking this adventure of like living somewhere else. I don't know if that
Yeah.
resonates.
Yeah, yeah, it does, I think, because it's like it's just doing things differently. Let me pull up my sense measure thing. Okay, that's too far. Okay. Um, so there's this other part called parens, which are these horizontal lines, and what they represent are crossings of these planetary energies. They have a little bit less of an impact than some of the major planetary lines do, but they will also influence the energy that you feel there. So for this one, for example, is like your Mars and Moon crossing, and that extends all the way around the world. But let me zoom out because sometimes this map is funny. Sun Pluto. Okay, interesting. So you have a Sun Pluto line basically going right through the middle of Germany. How far is Heidelberg?
Super close. It's like
Okay,
I always tell people that I'm from in
Heidelberg.
between Frankfurt and Heidelberg.
Okay, okay. Um, yeah, so you have this Sun Pluto line going through here, and so it's interesting that you had talked about potentially trying to move back there because what that feels like is it could be incredibly empowering, just in how you show up in the world, assuming you are ready to embrace that. Pluto is the planet of transformation, change. It it can create things, but it can also destroy things. And so it's like where your Pluto sits in your second house. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it really feels like it's one of those places where it's like when you're ready to really fully step into your purpose, your what brings you life, um, that could be a very supportive place for you. So,
Okay, let me just expand on that
okay.
because when I go to Germany, I really struggle to like fully embrace myself and like the things that I love. And I really struggle with the language too because a lot of the spiritual work I do, I literally don't know, like, I don't have the words for it in German.
Mm.
And because I live this very untraditional life, or I
Mm-hmm.
do things very untraditionally compared to a lot of folks from
Other
my
people. Yeah.
hometown,
Yeah.
where like to them it's like weird that I show up on social media and that I post on social media. And a lot of that too is like really like owning what I do and like really like showing my family that like no, like I'm the happiest I've ever been. Like just
Mm-hmm.
let me post my stories and like let me do the videos and like let me do my thing, right? Like really owning that. And that's also that journey that I'm on where I am owning that. I'm not letting those little comments that I get like influence me or deter
Mm-hmm.
me from actually doing what lights me up. And so I could totally see that and resonate with what you just said because I feel like I cannot go there until I fully own what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and Pluto is one of those I don't know. It's an extreme planet in the sense that it's either one way or another. It's like it's either your shadows or your power, um, and when you haven't fully embraced those shadows, or you haven't like really dived into that yet, or are ready to fully stand in like who you are and what you value, for you particularly because it's in your second house. I think it makes it harder, or it will bring up those shadows for you to work with. And so, yeah, I mean, connecting with the people at home, your family who still lives there, right? It will bring those up for you and kind of challenge you. Like, okay, is this who you really are? Are you committing to it? Right?
Yeah, it's every time, even when they come to visit me, it's like always a test for me. And more often than not, it's like too much to juggle. And then I like am not able to show up in the way that I want to show up in my business. So it's a huge, huge, huge work in progress for me. And also we are traveling over there in like less than a month at this point.
Okay.
So it'll be
Okay.
like a really nice test again. And I feel like this is like how I can measure like how far I've actually come. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely take a journal and write down what you notice as far as like the what shadows come up, what fears,
Mhm.
what things that are holding you back are coming up. So well, it'll be interesting to see how that goes this time around. Because I think as you
Yes.
evolve, it will hopefully get easier and easier. But um, yeah, just something to consider when you're there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's move across the world over to the US because you are in San Francisco right now, which
Mhm.
is, let
So a
me
little
see,
up north
right
from
there.
LA. Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I
you
don't
found it.
see,
Mhm.
let me measure this real quick and see if that has any influence. I think that might be just outside the range. Okay, so you might not actually have that much going on here. Um, but let me zoom in.
Bummer.
No, I mean that's not necessarily a bad thing. You do have a Venus line there, so that's also not a bad thing. Um, okay, so you are smack dab in between a Pluto line and a Venus line. Let's see how far those are. Depending on who you ask, I mean they're kind of they're within the sphere of influence, but not as strong as if you were a lot closer. I would say usually about, I think it's 250 to 400 miles is where things start to get like a little less intense. Um, and so those are basically like right there at that edge point, which is kind of a good thing too because it can be very intense if you're not used to having like a lot of angular planetary energy. And so, what I want to do though is look at your relocated chart for San Francisco because that will really tell like the full story of what you are experiencing there. Um, okay, so this is what your chart looks like in San Francisco. Basically, just completely shifts. um, yeah, yeah. So you have your your ascendant, instead of Libra, now becomes Gemini. So I'm curious if like you feel like you maybe became a little bit more outgoing when you came to San Francisco.
For sure.
Okay. Um, Gemini is, it can kind of be like a little bit more outgoing, a little bit more talkative than some of the other signs. And so having that as kind of your outward persona, especially with your Venus there too, it feels like it's something that you're kind of meant to do. And it's interesting too. So it, you know how Venus, we had talked about Venus making that trine to your north node. Your north node actually moves into the ninth house, which is often related to higher education. It's the house of expansion. It can also be related to spirituality in a sense, but mostly it's just like wisdom, growth, knowledge, those themes. And so what it feels like for me is like going there has really just been uh, huge growth experience.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
and probably far from the traditional sense of what you would expect to, especially with Aquarius being there. Um, it's interesting to me that you have all these Capricorn placements from your home family life moving into your eighth house of the shadows, and so working with some of these aspects of yourself that are maybe a little less traditional or more focused on spiritual, and also just the self discipline. So Saturn rules time, it rules hard work, it rules basically just putting your nose to the ground and getting things done, especially sitting there in Capricorn. And so sitting there in your eighth house, it feels like, you know, you were really working really hard at some of that shadow work that may have come up for you there. And, or it was a big focus for you. It was something that you maybe thought about a lot on, maybe not on a daily basis, but just regularly, and something that you continue to come back to, and maybe took a little bit more of a structured approach to do that. Uh, and you tell me whatever, if that
Yeah.
resonates at all.
No, that's absolutely true. I feel like once I found my purpose, once I signed up for this spiritual life coaching certification, that's when I
Mm-hmm.
took like the work that I did myself on myself like to a whole nother level. And that's when I consistently invested into like energy healing, into like coaching. And then really last year is when I took this to a whole new level and I took it really seriously. And I did a lot of like inner child work and a lot
Mm,
of healing, a lot of shadow work. And it just has opened me up so much. And it really has allowed me to take my relationship with my husband to a whole nother level too. And I think this is where like I forget that maybe not everyone does it the way that I did it because I did a lot of growth in like a small time frame. Like I did a lot of healing work in a small time frame, um, which is kind of wild.
yeah, it's funny that like, because I think people who maybe not have as much emphasis in the eighth house, it's like shadow work and healing and that sort of thing is not really on their mind. But the people who end up having like these eighth house placements or significant parts of them or whatever, then that becomes a big focus in their life. And so, you know, the fact that, you know, you were diligent about doing that, and then also maybe did it a little differently from other people too, who some people, you know, maybe they spend years in therapy or whatever, but for you, it's like, no, let's go and let's do this and get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
had a
funny.
really amazing mentor who just guided me through it. She's an Akashic Records practitioner, and I learned from
Nice.
her how to read the Akashic Records. And it was like intense at time and then really beautiful other times when I really saw the work pay off. And yeah, because I didn't grow up, like I mentioned, I didn't do any therapy, like I didn't
Hmm.
do any of that. So I feel like there was a lot that I just had to work through.
Hmm.
And it really started once my son was like 2-ish years old. He's now 5. And
Okay.
then last year, I just took it to a whole another level.
Yeah. Uh, that's fascinating. I so when you think about like some of the shadow work and stuff like that, Scorpio is always a big part of that. So your North Node here squares Pluto, and so it's like Pluto sitting in your sixth house of work, daily life, daily routines, how you take care of your health, your body. Um, I Complete shift in what you had done before, releasing, the tennis, what um, what you had known previously, and then going all in into something else feels feels pretty aligned with Scorpio, to be honest, and especially Pluto being there. And
Yeah, and
then I wonder, go ahead.
I'm trying to be very diligent about how I take care of myself. And I do a lot of like energy healing myself, and I do a lot of like meditation and, those type of things. And whenever I don't, I can tell. I can just tell. I can just tell. My son can tell too. He's
Yeah,
like, "Mommy, don't say that." And sometimes I'm like, "Come
yeah.
on," I say, "Come on," and like the way that it comes out, it's like,
Hmm.
you know, him not listening a few
Mm,
times.
hmm.
I lose a little bit of my patience now.
Hmm.
The way I say it in my eyes is not bad, but because he isn't used to it at all, he can pick up on that impatience immediately, and it really gets to him, and he calls me out on my BS because I believe that our children are our greatest teachers, right?
Yeah,
And whenever
yeah.
I am in that state where like I haven't filled my cup as much, I haven't done the meditation, I haven't done all the things, which I believe in like minimal self-care to be honest, but um he just like picks up on it and he just drives me extra nuts. But it's really just a reflection of myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that like self-care is probably a big part of your life in a sense, in that like uh, it's I don't know if like you like sticking to routines.
I don't.
Okay.
But that
Scorpio.
being said, I need the self care. So every day I might be doing things a little bit differently. Or like I might, even like if we think about like morning beverage, I cannot always have the same thing. Like I cannot always do the same thing. I
Yeah.
switched up, but yet I always need like a certain foundation or a certain baseline.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting like the struggle of wanting to do things maybe a little more willy-nilly, and then also the need to do things that are a little bit more structured. um, when we look at when you relocate somewhere, you have a shift in your angles, which is the whole basis of like astrocartography, right? Your angles shift. So you have, your main axis, your AC DC axis sitting here in Gemini and Sagittarius. And what these are both mutable signs. They like to kind of go with the flow, maybe not have anything set, just kind of see where the path takes them in a sense. And then on your IC DC or MC axis, you have them in fixed signs. They like a little bit more stability. They like kind of going at a set pace and doing things a certain way. They don't really like change. And so these two things kind of compete with each other in terms of how you live your life. It's on a personal level, you may not like the routines, the stability and that sort of thing, but in order for you to do well in your home and your work life, it's like you kind of need that too.
And I resonate with that so much. Like it's literally always a struggle for me. Like I think about it like the feminine, the masculine, right? Like the feminine in me, like she loves going with the flow. Like she
Hmm.
just loves doing kind of like whatever she wants to do. Like just doing whatever self-care practice feels good in that moment.
Yeah.
And then I really thrive too, like having the routines and really being my masculine. And like it's I feel like I've learned over the last year more so to like be more in balance of the
Hmm.
two.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's just hard. Like I go from one spectrum to the other spectrum and I'm like, "Oh my god, like I need like I love doing this hypnosis at the end of the day or even in the morning, and
Hmm.
I was doing it for like maybe 2 weeks, like every single day, and it lit me up. It made me so happy. It really like just added something to my
Hmm.
day. And now I haven't done it for like 10 days. And I'm like, oh my God, like you're driving me nuts, that like I cannot stick to it, but also I don't find another way to incorporate it, because I feel like
Yeah.
this is where I allow myself the flexibility that even if I don't do it at night, let me do it on the walk that I'm on. And maybe it's not
Hmm.
perfect, but it's
Hmm.
like better than not doing it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's like you're a lot of things in your chart kind of scream like balance. This is a big part of what you're working through, and it's like moving to San Francisco is kind of a little bit of a test in that sense. It's like, can you give up that control, the part that needs to really control everything, and transform it into something maybe a little bit different, like the aspect that it makes to where's that 15 degrees to your North Node in your ninth house in Aquarius is like, where can you shift a little bit? Where can you release maybe some of those shadow traits of Scorpio and embrace more of the transformative aspects of it? Um, so I don't know. I don't believe in coincidences at all when it comes to where we go and what we're there to do. I think each place that you go or that you're drawn to has a lesson for you or something for you to learn and grow into. And so, yeah, when you say that you struggle with it or like maybe you're a little too hard on yourself for not sticking to a rigid routine. Is there a different way that you can look at that? Is there something else that you can do maybe a little differently? You have like your that Lilith, it's sextiling your moon. So it's like, what if you let your emotions guide you for what
Hmm.
it is that you need to do that day?
Yeah, and that's almost how I like when I like my best days, that's kind of like how I go about it. I'm like, I don't have any strict routines where I like beat myself up. Yes, I love a cold shower in the morning. That just gets me going. And then it's like, okay, I know my like meditation makes me feel really good. So if I can
Hmm.
squeeze that in before X time, amazing. Whether it's before the kids get up or whether it's before I open my laptop, like I feel
Hmm.
like this is how I allow myself flexibility.
Hmm.
And then also, I don't know what it is. It's for sure some sort of a shadow or something in me that like doesn't want to deal, and I was like,
Hmm.
I'm just going to open up the laptop because I need to get back to stuff right now, like when I have my deadlines, etc.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, I love this reminder of just like, girl, you need the routines.
Hmm.
And maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but you need the way I'm understanding it, you need the routine and find a way to kind of make it happen without beating yourself up.
Yeah. It,
Yeah.
it find a way to make it happen without beating yourself up, and then also like allowing yourself a little bit of flexibility in how you do it too.
Yes. That's
Um,
exactly in my head how I was thinking about it. And
okay.
that's how like my best days are lived. You know what I mean? Like I find a way to incorporate those like things that make me feel really good, which I said, the energy healing, the meditation, maybe even the bath and the walk. But maybe the walk is at lunchtime or maybe
Hmm.
it's at 5 p.m. It doesn't matter,
Hmm.
like that's the flexibility.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think one of Pluto's greatest lessons is, especially for us with the Pluto and Scorpio thing, where it's like releasing some of that control, releasing some of that need to make it perfect, or just feeling like you need to be able to do it all in this certain way, um, and just kind of it Scorpio is also a water sign, right? It's one of the darker water signs, we'll say, but it's a water sign nonetheless, and water does best when it's allowed to flow. And so allowing yourself to be in that state of flow is is helpful.
Yeah, and you know what's really special that I meant to mention is that the balance has been really huge, and that's a theme that came up when I first connected with my spirit baby. And it's so beautiful to me that you're mentioning this, and then also that's like what I've been working on with her, or like that's the first time that she kind of like pointed it out to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um yeah, it's special.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you have had that confirmation in other ways too, and especially like through a spirit baby. Like that's God, I love that. I
Yeah.
think that's an amazing thing. Um, and so I guess like when we're looking at San Francisco for you, like it it feels like a very good place for growth. A really good place for you to continue to expand. Who you're kind of meant to be in this lifetime. However, like if I think a lot of people when they look at astrocartography, they're also interested in like, okay, where's the best place for me though? Like, and some people it may be living that really nourishing home life, or it may be getting recognition or their career, whatever. Finding their partner. You already have a partner, so I'm not concerned about that, but maybe more harmony in partnership. And so it's like if there was anywhere else in the world, I know you had given me Guatemala, but is there anything in particular that you are looking for?
No, I think part of our thought of moving out of the US is just having more balance,
Mm. Hmm.
more
Hmm.
slowness, just more like being more, yeah, simply said, more balance, just like more emphasis on like a slow family life where I feel like part of like us moving, like I always said, like I only want to move once my business is able to sustain our family because I don't want to be in a different culture, like working corporate, like that's something I could not imagine. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just having like that balance.
Okay. Do you have any plans to try to leave corporate at any point in time?
No, just once my business is in a place where like it could sustain us.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I only wonder that just because it's like you do have Chiron sitting in your second house here. And so maybe something else to think about. I know you got plenty of other things to think about too, but as far as, what is truly of value to you in terms of um, money, what you need in a sense, and really thinking about like what does money mean to you?
What does money mean to me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or that financial stability, we'll say.
Yeah. And it's really that financial stability that I just feel like now I'm able to like just see how I can get there. Like I always think like
Mm,
I don't
mm-hmm,
need tons and tons of tons. Like I
mm-hmm,
don't. I just want the stability so I don't have to worry and I can still do the things that light me up. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But I also know that I'm going to get there. Like the more I'm going to be of
mm-hmm.
service and the more I'm going to be lit up by what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, so do you want to look at Guatemala and see what that has in store for you?
Yeah, briefly. Mhm. That'd be
Okay,
awesome.
there we go. Okay, so there it is.
Looks like there's not anything close. That's exciting, huh?
It's a little bit outside of there, but so I saw the Lilith midheaven nearby. Okay, so real quick, I find it funny. So when we were talking, I was like, it would be great if she could get to like a Pisces midheaven line, and there it is. um,
Wow.
So Pisces midheavens, I always attribute it to more of like the spiritual energy worker type person
Mm.
who's or even like the creative or whatever, but like it's very much more of a spiritual role that you would be stepping into, or that really kind of holds that energy there. Um, so first off, you become a Cancer rising, which I find interesting, and so much more emphasis in terms of uh, the Cancer traits of being the nurturing mother, the one to care for others, and really kind of coming off as that warm vibe. So what happens here? Um, you become Cancer rising. Your descendant moves into Capricorn. Your IC moves into Virgo, and your midheaven moves into Pisces. And so basically what I see here is essentially, you know, you're really kind of embracing that Cancer Sun aspect or placement of being that nurturer, though the warmth of the mother. Um, and then also when it comes to your relationships with others, is the Capricorn kind of comes out there. The Capricorn archetype that I like to think of, especially for women, is like the boss babe vibe. And so when you say it's like something that you would want to move there when you feel like you're kind of financially stable, it's like that feels about right. And then let's see. The interesting thing that I was looking at, you have Venus sitting in your 12th house, and we had mentioned before that it trines your north node. And for this, it feels very much like a spiritual place for you in a sense. It you'll kind of be uncovering a lot more of your shadows, perhaps in relation to some of the emotions that you carry with you. And especially being a Cancer rising, your emotions are going to be a prominent part of, who you are, and how you kind of express that to the world. When you want to be working on this book, like that could also be a great place for channeling that too. Um, and since you had mentioned that, maybe you could channel it. And so having that in your 12th house, it feels like there's almost this greater connection to source.
Oh my gosh, that
Um,
just made me really excited.
yeah, that's good.
Hmm. Yeah, because it
Um,
is a very like remote place. It's very
mhm,
it is very spiritual around there, especially. So I totally resonate with like what you shared in the beginning. And like the financial stability piece is like cost of living there is a lot lower. So I feel like I don't have as much pressure on the financial to
mhm,
make it work out there. You
mhm.
know what I mean? But it would just be like this
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
like
that's fair. That's a huge shift from San Francisco.
yeah, it's just a huge shift. I feel like for us as a family, of course, like friends and things like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, but so what I see here though is that like you probably won't really have much of an issue in terms of maybe making some of those friends. It seems like you'll be very proactive with doing that or building a community for yourself. Um, so 11th house is all about your community, your friendships, and so having Mars in Aries kind of leading that house, it feels like you're gonna go out there and try to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm more worried about my son, Like by the time that we move there,
Mm,
I feel like he would have some more friends here and I feel like that I'm more worried
hmm.
about. But yeah, I'm not I know of my kids, I know of my husband, and then everything else I'll figure out, but it's more like the kids,
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally understand that, and I think hopefully you be able to build a community where the people that you make friends with have kids, and so that it'll be a little bit easier for him in that sense. Okay. The other things that kind of come up here are you've got, well, I know we haven't really talked much about Jupiter, I don't think, but your Jupiter does move into your first house. And what happens with Jupiter is, it expands anything that it touches. So your outward personality, who you are, will kind of come come out a little bit more while you're there. I like to attribute Jupiter in the first house as like a happy-go-lucky kind of persona. um, so it could just make you feel like a lot better in general. Um, Jupiter also does, like, if unchecked, in a sense, it can also expand in other ways too, if you know what I mean. But having Jupiter in your first house is usually a good thing. Now it does make that, well, that's very loose. It makes an opposition to your Saturn. And so having Saturn in your seventh house, I don't know. I wonder if that's like something where it might rub people the wrong way when you're like maybe being a little bit more bold or expressive or things like that. But I think that's something to keep in mind. How you express yourself or may not be as like well received. And so again, like the themes of balance, like how do you express yourself without being maybe too overbearing in a sense?
No, that's a good point because I feel like over there it's like very different, you know?
Yeah, and it could be a challenge in that too, because you do have in your fifth house those Scorpio placements. Fifth house can also relate to self-expression, and so it's like there's probably that part of you that wants to come out, um, maybe a little bit more out there, a little bit more. I won't say aggressive, but more assertive, and so like that's just something I guess to keep in mind as when you're there. The cusp does land in Libra though, which is a lot more harmonious, we'll say. And so that may be something that you kind of have to work through is your ability to show up authentically, um, but also maybe, I don't know, maybe also not take things too personally too. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes complete sense. That makes
Okay.
complete sense.
Let's see.
But it sounds like it's a really good place for me to move to. Like if that's something that we are, oh my gosh, that we are considering, then
Hmm.
it would be good.
I mean, it could be a good place for like relationships and really kind of stepping into yourself a little bit. And I mean, with these first house placements, your sun especially going in there, you're having these Scorpio placements coming into your fifth house of like self expression, your seventh house, and then your 11th house. It could be a good place. I don't know about long term though, just because I feel like it could be kind of challenging too with having your North Node sitting in the eighth house. I wonder if that would just get very tiring if you were to be there for a long time. So I don't know if you've ever considered doing like a vacation home type thing where or like you splitting your time in two different places,
Yeah, I feel like that'd be a lot,
where you
but
live there.
yeah, I feel like that'd be a
Well,
lot.
yeah.
But what we thought about is like renting out our place. We're here in
Hmm.
California, where
Hmm.
we wouldn't have to worry about the mortgage, but at the same time,
Hmm.
we could always come back if we wanted to. Like we're not saying officially
Yeah.
goodbye. It's just like in
Yeah.
the moment we're choosing different and we're choosing the adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's totally fair. Um, I think I think that's probably a smart move because I think it's always scary. I think going into something completely different and going all in, and I don't know. I mean, some people maybe it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, like having doing more of that spiritual work or really going all in on that. And but I think over time it could be tiring in a sense too. Now that being said, you don't have a ton of major angular energy there, so it might not be as bad as some other places you could go.
That's really how I see myself there. Like I don't see myself there for like our whole entire life, but more so a
Hmm.
few years to just live a completely different life.
Yeah, yeah. I think you would get some pretty good insights into yourself and maybe even like the stuff that you value because it's like your south node being there in your second house of values is like, what can you let go of that maybe doesn't necessarily serve you anymore, and bring you more into what is that you actually want. So completely untraditional lifestyle to being in Guatemala compared to other people who live in the big city that that like their creature comforts and those sort of thing. But
Yes, and I feel that. Like I feel that 1000%. And I kind of yeah, I didn't expect that we would go to Guatemala before like, having the podcast on my calendar. But it's so cool because my husband
okay,
and I haven't really talked about it much and we've only talked about
mm-hmm.
possibly moving to Europe. But I feel like
Oh,
this
okay,
is awakening something within me of like, hey, could this be a option? Could this be a potential? And could this really be that adventure for us that, yeah. And what I like about it too is like completely different people and almost
mm-hmm.
rediscovering who we are in a completely different
Mm-hmm.
environment. And two, like I
Mm-hmm.
would just love to really improve my Spanish and to be actually become
Okay.
like fluent in it.
I mean, that's definitely one way to do it is immersing yourself in that.
Yeah, I feel like either way will be a spiritual experience. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
just like this whole journey. I don't know. Like, I feel like each adventure I've been on, I've just learned so much about myself. And I feel like this is part of a spiritual experience is like that self discovery journey and becoming more familiar with who you are. And two, it is very spiritual over there. And I can just see myself even like working with cacao and just like diving deeper into like some other aspects of spirituality that I haven't really necessarily like embraced as much or know as much about. Talking about like really being the learner. But no, I'm so grateful. Like this was really great. Thank you so much for gifting me this.
Of course, absolutely, and thank you so much for volunteering uh, um, to come on here. And I think there's not a lot of people would be willing to share this with uh, everybody else, I guess. And so, yeah, I appreciate you for coming on here and being open and sharing your own story. You'll have to let me know if you do end up making it out to Guatemala and what that's like for you.
Yes, I will 1000% let you know what I do, where I end up, and all things.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. All right. Well, thank you, Carla. I appreciate your time. And that's all that we have for today.